This episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show is brought to you by Mountain Glass Arts. For the month of March, Mountain Glass is offering their Boro sale. Northstar first quality rods at 25% off. Just put in the code NORTHSTAR, that's NORTHSTAR. And for all you soft glass nerds, they're offering their soft glass sale, Double Helix, 15% off. Just put in the word D-Helix at checkout. That's D-H-E-L-I-X at checkout. Just go to mountainglass.com for any other questions, comments, or concerns. That's mountainglass.com. This is the Wise Guy Radio Show, a podcast dedicated to educating and inspiring through conversations with today's top talents in the world of glass. We will be dissecting their journeys in hopes to deliver actionable content that you, the artist, can start implementing now, helping you grow not only as a creative spirit, but also a successful artistic entrepreneur. With a little organization, relationship building, and your artistic ability, you can obtain greatness. Climb aboard. Whether an artist, retail owner, or enthusiast, we have a ton of fun in store for you. Welcome to the Wise Guy Radio Show. Hey, what's happening? Welcome to the Wise Guy Radio Show, episode number 87. This is Jay Michael, your host. Thank you so much for tuning in today. With 17 years of experience behind the torch, I am as excited as always to bring you conversations with artists, sharing their stories in hopes to entertain and inspire while helping you grow your business. Today is a super fun episode. We are featuring artist, glass engineer, scientist Mike Souza. He has been a glass maker, scientific glass artist since 1973, where he apprenticed under his father, a company he worked for, and now is the lead glass artist at Princeton University. He's also the director of the Northeast section of the American Scientific Glassblowing Society, which was founded in 1952, not by himself, but that's when that organization was founded. And we get into all kind of crazy conversations from the vacuum tubes, scientific glass applications, science. I mean, it's amazing the amount of depth that we get into. It's really a lot of fun conversation we have. Some of the stuff might be kind of boring and dry for you. For myself, personally, I had a lot of fun with this because I love science and math and glass. And again, we're all here for glass. And you guys will be blown away by the amount of knowledge that Mike has. Not only is he a very talented glass artist and glass maker, he doesn't consider himself an artist in a sense. I do, because I feel that their field of scientific glass blowing has a vision, and to me, if you have a vision and then you make it come to reality, well, then you're an artist, no matter what the hell it is you're doing. But again, this guy has you'll hear all the stuff, the stories. Kind of on my end, I've kind of fucked up. Didn't realize how full my memory card was. So about 45 minutes into the conversation, my memory card stopped, and I didn't realize it until 15 minutes after the fact. So we lost about 15 minutes of the conversation. It wasn't anything too crazy, but one thing that we did miss on the recording is that I learned that there is a laboratory, a glass laboratory, where they create scientific applications and things, apparatuses, for testing basically atoms on a molecular structure level, and there has to be completely radiation free. And by doing this, there is basically a mountain that has a laboratory inside of it that is takes almost 3 hours to get from the entrance to where your place is, because of the decontamination process to completely rid you of any type of radioactive anything. One of the things that I learned too was that he mentioned that bananas are actually somewhat radioactive because of the potassium in there, and potassium is a molecule structure that is radioactive. So even if you had a banana for lunch, you couldn't if you wanted to go work at this place. He said that basically people that leave these laboratories or leave this place leave like zombies, more or less, because of the amount of depletion they have. I guess, from getting all the radiation out of you. I guess it's probably a good thing in the long run, but at first, I guess it takes a while to recover from. But that was probably the main part of that missing link, in a sense, for the show. So what you'll hear at one point in time, about 45 minutes in there, you'll hear my little satellite signal, and then it just transitions into the rest of the conversation. And being a scientific artist or glass maker himself, we didn't get into our crash in a kiln round, but I did ask him a couple questions that were pertaining still to that round, just to kind of get some insight into his life. We are going to be bringing him back on next month to do a Q&A, debunking, myth-busting topics. So if you have any questions at all that you think you may not be sure if it's actually truth, please send those questions into info@wiseguyradio.com. We're going to be doing a complete full myth-busting conversation episode. And then also we are going to be getting into the ASGS, which is the American Scientific Glassblowing Society, which is having a symposium in May that I've been invited to. It's a 4-day event going on in Tucson. I'm pretty excited to go out there. I've never been to Tucson. Also looking forward to meeting all my friends and family out there that are in the glass world as well. So can't wait to do that. So in the meantime, you guys sit back, enjoy the ride. This is around 2.5-hour show, I believe. And again, Mike Souza, guy's amazing. Just you'll see. And he's quite funny on top of it all. So anyways, y'all, I'm getting the hell out of here. Got to go get in the shower and get my ass to Disney World to go make some flower vases and some little owls I'm doing today. The Wise Guys are invading Disney today. I'm making some owls. It's kind of fun. And for those of you who have not listened to my personal episode, I think it was called What Makes Me Tick. It was my birthday episode. I got into the conversation about what actually inspired the Wise Guy brand, which all started from a small little owl that I had to make for one of our guests at work at Disney. And now I still make those owls, so it's kind of fun seeing the owls when they're on the shelf. So I like to say that my Wise Guys have now officially invaded Disney, and they will be there today. So that being said, I'm getting out of here. Y'all take it easy. I've said this already. So time for breakfast and getting the hell out. Love you guys. Y'all rock. Go to Wise Guy Radio. Actually, yeah, don't go to wiseguyradio.com. It is not up and running. I have completely taken that down. We now have wiseguymedia.com. You can go to for all episodes archived or on there. I'm still getting all the bugs out on my end and trying to figure out really how to make this WordPress thing work. But for now, you can go on there. All of our documentations that I have written for you guys through the Dropbox folder on there under Documents. You can go to Podcast Archives. You can listen to every single episode on through the website. And I don't have the subscription bar on there yet, so you can't not do that. So just go there to the website, wiseguymedia.com. That's WYZGUYMEDIA.com. And check out all the new stuff I got on there. And from there, if you do need to contact me, just send me an email. That's info@wiseguyradio.com. That's WYZGUYRADIO.com. Love you guys. Take it easy. Enjoy this episode. Peace. Hey, Mike, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good.
Awesome, man. Well, it's an honor and a privilege to have you on here, and it's kind of fun. Another glass artist in the community reached out to me about you, and you contacted me, and here we are now doing the show. So I'm super excited to share your story. 40-plus years, scientific glass artist, a huge, your portfolio and everything you have is like 25,000 pages long. It's incredible. Your academic background and just your knowledge of what you have with glass is mind-blowing. And hopefully those listening to the show will probably have to listen to it 3 or 4 times to really grasp all this stuff because, I'd say sit back and hang on because this is going to be a fun ride.
Yeah. Well, let me qualify, too.
Yep.
Artist is if, in the very broadest terms, I don't claim to be that. But I do think if ingenuity is an art, then scientific glass blowing is an art form then.
Oh, yeah, I agree. That's what I'm saying, man, because you're taking a medium, doing a functional application to it, but what you're doing in the head of what you have to do, like the whole engineering aspect, I think there's art to it for sure. So there you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So before we get too crazy and sidetracked, if you want to go ahead and give us a little bit of background on yourself, where you got started, and what led you to where you are now, Yeah.
Well, I'm often asked that question, how did I get into scientific glass blowing? And my canned answer is that my dad was a shop manager in a glass shop, and he had 5 sons, so it was a form of punishment for all of us. And I'm the one who had to do a life sentence. But, it was really something I didn't want to do. Nobody wants to go to work for their dad,
Yeah.
But it was something that I could always do. And I fell into it. And as a kid, we'd go into the shop. There was seldom any glass blowing being done. And it was one summer I needed a job, and I actually got to see the glass blowing, and I kind of fell into the quicksand, as I say.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's actually, yeah, and I think to kind of the root of all of us have that root and fascination with the fire, and just like I always find when I'm pulling points when I'm getting my prep work done, any demonstration or any public that I've seen that, I find I draw more of a crowd on just the process of pulling a point, because you're stretching and heating, and compared to if I'm making some beautiful piece of glass, but they like to see the process of glass being melted and heated up and stretching. And
yeah, there's something primordial about being around the fire.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in our DNA, from the caveman period, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. So through the process with your father, what was he doing at the time himself?
Well, he was more of a shop manager. He
Okay.
wasn't a glass blower.
Okay.
He started as a grinder. So back then, you had these joints, I guess. They're also called gongs or something like that. And they have to match up perfectly. So they didn't have the diamond technology that they have today. Diamond was extremely expensive. Essentially, you would grind these tapers onto sleeves and just take this mud solution of carborundum, and there was this big metal taper called a lap, and you would just choke it onto this machine, spinning the lap at hundreds of RPMs. And he was doing a real big one, about a 4-inch one, and it lopped off the fingers of one of his hands.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It actually turned out to be kind of a boon. He got a few $1,000s to buy a new car, and of course, so long as you can't be productive, they put you into management.
Oh.
So it worked out pretty good for him.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, so I guess you were saying you're going in there in the summer times, and you started kind of helping out a little bit here and there and getting your hands dirty?
Yeah, I had to paint this big cyclone fence. It was just the worst job I had ever had in my life. Might still be at the top of the list. And when it rained or the weather was too bad, I'd be inside. And now I'm finally seeing scientific glass blowing being done for the first time. And my first impression was, how the heck do they see anything? Everything was this yellow clear.
Yeah.
Of course, because I wasn't walking around with didymium glasses. And I think my dad always wanted one of his sons to get into the business. It was one way to stay out of Vietnam War at the time. And I signed in and kind of quickly fell in love with it. And a lot of it was at first doing the artistic stuff on the side was my biggest joy at the time.
What kind of stuff were you doing?
Oh, mostly lousy stuff. Roses and swans and knitted ships and anything that would impress the women.
Yeah.
And most especially their mothers was always worthwhile for me. And I would do little fairs and set up a torch and make stuff. But back then we didn't have the colors.
Right.
So everything was pretty much formula. You made the swans, and there wasn't too much you could do that just didn't look empty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's nothing like the color in glass, and I see it today, and I'm almost wish I could go back to the Wayback Machine and start all over again. It's just incredible artistry that I see out there.
Yeah, it's interesting, and that's why part of bringing you on was being the shows at first. I guess my niche in a sense is the pipe industry, and but glass in general, because we all love to talk about glass, and to see the current industry and the way that the glass has gone from the basic cheap little pipe to now there are these amazing scientific made pieces, taking techniques that you yourself and others in your industry have really been the trailblazers for in a sense, and then through school and whatever else. So it's cool to see this kind of crossover going with the two industries in a sense, and it's created jobs, it's created income for people to raise and support their families with. It's a lot of fun. But
it absolutely makes sense, and I'll tell you why. Because when I started out, there was a whole assortment of things that an apprentice or somebody on the beginning end of the scale could learn how to do production-wise, right? You could make thermometers, hydrometers, all kinds of things on the bench, and your employer could make money as well.
Right.
A lot of that has become automated, and a lot of that has been outmoded by technology. So for the longest time, I was always worried about my profession, because I wondered how would that person matriculate up to the skill levels required to do cutting edge stuff for research and science. And as I kind of discovered, these young people doing pipes and functional art are actually learning at a far more accelerated and created pace than I ever could in the scientific industry, because when you're in an apprenticeship, there's a rigid ceiling above you.
Right.
You're learning from somebody who, wants to keep you at a pace where you can also be productive for the company. It's just the way things have to be. And there's a hierarchy. You may be better than somebody 2 more years advanced, but you're not going to replace that person just on merit. It's a time system. And with these pipe industry, people can become their own entrepreneurs.
Yep.
And they have no ceiling. They also have no safety net,
Right.
So that's a concern. But they're learning, basic things that I, as an apprentice, could never learn or never had an interest in, as to cost factors. How much did the oxygen cost? How much am I paying for fuels? What do I set this price at? So they may look a little strange or off color to some people in our industry, but I really respect the hard work and the effort that they put into it.
Heck yeah. Yeah, man, I agree 100%, man. It's the idea now with the way that the laws are changing and the industry is going is taking the glass artists and giving them the ability to make a living, and also, like you're saying, become an entrepreneur. And I consider it like this, I haven't coined it, but it's the whole artistic entrepreneur idea, to be able to be an artist and make a living saying, yeah, I'm a professional artist. Your parents are always like, don't be an artist for a living, but you can be, if you have the skill and technique and the drive and the passion and the dedication yourself, the dedication you've had for 40 years doing what you're doing, to which will go through to where you're at now. It's 40 years is a lot of damn time to dedicate yourself to something. A lot of jobs, you can't even have a job for 40 years there anymore because they don't last that long.
Yeah. I used to be, when I first started, you'd work for Ford or GM, and that was it. You buy your car, your boat, and you're set for life. Nowadays, if you have a job resume that doesn't show that you can adapt and move from one place to another, they're wondering whether you're even worth hiring.
Yeah.
Where in my day, they would say this guy is going to hop around. There's no sense in hiring him for this job, and it's just totally done a 180.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. To be able to design your life. I mean, in a sense, is part of again what this show's about is having the ability. Like I can get up in the morning and take my kids to school, and we'll go walk my dogs and exercise and go play out my yard, and then go to the studio for 5 to 8 hours and crank out a bunch of shit, and then come home and have my family time, and do that 5 days a week if I want to, or 4 days a week or one day. I may not make a lot of money, but still the opportunity is there. We can do that.
I mean, more importantly, you can't export somebody's skill.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones who can export it,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you can take that and do it in Florida. You can do it in Colorado. And there's a transportability to it that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
There's an immediate reward system to this kind of labor. If you do sales, you'll come up and you'll make all these visits and, do the best you can, and you're not going to get the return back. Somebody may call with the biggest order you ever seen, and merely because they found your name in a phone book.
Sure.
Glass blowing is cruel but fair. If you put in the time, it pays you back. And there's no eraser. You can't erase something that you did 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
And say, well, I didn't do that. Sometimes it comes back to haunt you, but it's very personal. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's a fun thing. Like our glass is very archivable. I mean, glass over the centuries has been, but the glass, like I was talking to somebody recently about the goblets that Corning has, the old, back from from Venice and stuff, and the glass is somewhat deteriorating, so they have to put a coating over it to keep the glass from falling apart of some sort, to preserve it.
Yeah.
Or the glass we're doing nowadays, the technology's changed so much. It's like you can make a pipe and you wonder what aliens are going to find when they dig up through our soils and shit. Like my ex-wife, she's got her backyard's probably got 50 fucking pipes in her gardens that I used to dig and bury, and all my old shit that I didn't like, I'd throw it in the backyard and bury it. And it'll be there forever potentially until someone finds it.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat. So yeah, man. So kind of your beginnings, you got into, you did your apprenticeship and then you left the nest in a sense. What were some of the first things you were doing outside of that in the scientific world?
Outside of the scientific world?
Well, no, just in the scientific world, yeah. Like what were some of the first applications you were doing?
Oh, mostly a bunch of test tubes that would be turned into dewars of different kinds, and TV necks. God, I hated doing TV necks. It was lead glass and pretty thick, so you'd have to use this real loud oxidizing fire, a lot of oxygen, and it has a high thermal expansion, so you got to kind of sneak up on it and not really touch it with the flame, and otherwise the glass would just turn black, look like heck. So all I do is just one after another, just heat up an end and flare it so it could be put onto a new picture tube or something like that.
Interesting.
Later on, went on to do a lot of quartz work and some quite big stuff too. I found that if I was going to move at a rate that I wanted to be at, or a level that would move me forward faster, I had to bounce around a lot. So I generally didn't keep a job for more than 2 years before looking elsewhere.
Hmm.
And I would go to one place because, I could learn something there. Grass is always greener, it's a good way to learn different things. And the more versatility you get, the better off you'll be in the long run.
Yeah,
And it's
for
been
sure.
a big help for me.
Yeah, and I think that goes for anything too, but specifically with glass, what you surround yourself in.
Yeah, and especially in the scientific field, because what's hot today may not be hot tomorrow, but what was hot yesterday may be hot again.
Yeah.
You know, so there's this always like shuffle of materials and technology. I've found in my field.
Yeah. Well, like I guess it's kind of a good transition there. Even though I still want to continue with your first half of your career, but a paper that you wrote that you shared with me, which I found was fascinating. The scientific glass blowing is trending and how we can adapt, and you really got into the nitty gritty of the history of the manufacturing process for war or for the military or for the advancements of technology in a sense too. But where it went from, like you're saying, it went from, in your paper, it talked about the beginning of vacuum tubes were like a big thing in the 1940s and glassware and stuff. And then eventually they got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller as technology advanced to a point to where they didn't even need them anymore because they came up with the microchip, the microprocessor and stuff.
Right.
But then they had to come back to it, and they needed, again, those artists and the guys that created the tubes in a different format, but that had more of a higher skill to it. But they still
had
brought
to
it
put
up.
the chip. They had to put that transistor now on silicon. So that created a need for all these quartz workers. I guess the salient point is, if you are making buggy whips when that Model T comes rolling down the line, you don't necessarily lose a job. Instead, what you do is you may have to learn how to make a transmission or build an engine. And there's always an opportunity to, improve yourself along that line. And the vacuum tube was huge back in the 40s. I mean, all your televisions, radios, X-rays, everything was based on that vacuum tube. And then, bam, with the technology of transistor, it got displaced.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. But then you fast forward to now 2016, where it's no longer there, but glass is in everything.
Yeah. There are whole categories of sciences that have been in, a mainstay now that weren't even around when I first started glass blowing. Environmental sciences. We have photonics. There are all kinds of new things happening in chemistry. You have organic electronics. Now, if you're making a new material and it's a plastic that can also have light properties as well as conductive properties, is that chemistry? Is it material science? Is it electrical engineering? You have all this crosstalk and technology taking place like never before.
Yeah.
And I think the point I wanted to make in my article there was, if you were working in a university or in scientific glass, it was almost strictly manufacturing. You made something, you filled up the shelves, and chemistry departments around the world would order from a catalog and have it delivered. There are far, far less items in that catalog for chemistry. It's been reduced for several reasons, which would just bore the daylights out of most people. But because of the facility of glass, it's now broadened out into so many different sciences that at Princeton, probably it used to be 100% of the work at Princeton was in the chemistry department. Now it's about 25% of the work I do. Now I'm working quite a bit in the physics department, environmental sciences, geosciences, jet propulsion, material sciences. Is just a very broad area of researches that I work with, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And that's part of like myself, the glass. I love the science that's involved in the creation of it. And then seeing, like we were talking earlier, the documentary that's on Netflix. It's called How We Got to Now, and the whole series they have a show on glass, and it's so neat how one little idea changes the course of history. And and the show talks about the glass starting in Venice and wanting clear glass, which then led into the spectacle, which led into glasses, and then microscope and telescope, and then it goes from there. It's like it's freaking amazing.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk about a butterfly effect, and if you were to measure areas of civilization and say, well, this was the Stone Age, this was the Brass Age, this is the Iron Age. Clearly, this is the Glass Age we're living in.
Yeah.
If you look at the emergence of glass from the time of around Venice to where we've gotten today, if you just took a little snapshot, China is so much more advanced than we are. Even the Islamic nations are more advanced in their astrology and in their math. But with the emergence of glass and several incredible discoveries, Western civilization just takes off and if you just took the last 600-700 years, you can't point to any other period of time where there's just been this rapid explosion of technology and scientific discovery.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
I went to a conference out in Cambridge, and there was a great speaker there, Alan McFarland. And his whole talk was about the importance of glass. And he pointed out that if you took 20 of the most significant scientific discoveries, 15 of them use glass as the main material.
Wow. Yeah.
If you think about it, Newton's prism, he was able to split light into different colors and recombine them back with another prism. It really caused the Age of Enlightenment, because now you're talking things aren't magical or mysterious anymore. At the time, there was probably we looked at matter as just earth, wind, and fire. Now we have some 160, I think, elements going on to the periodic table upwards, and a lot of that was just through glass.
Yeah, it's crazy. So neat. And just like you're saying, just through that, as that advances and the periodic table grows and the elements grow, and so does glass and the technology that intertwines with it too. It's amazing.
Well, if you just take Robert Boyle's vacuum tube, the classic bell jar,
okay,
right? And then you take Priestley's experiment where he takes a mouse and he puts in a candle, they both die very quickly. Then he takes a mouse and he puts in a plant next to it, and they're able to coexist. He was able to discover that there is such a thing as oxygen, and there is photosynthesis. Now, you could have done the same experiment with a box out of metal and opened it up and see, well, they're still alive. But to actually observe it as it's ongoing is only something that glass can do.
Right.
And that is just incredible. If you take the electron tube, until that discovery, atom literally meant undividable. It was the smallest unit you could measure. But because of the discovery of the vacuum tube, they find electrons, subatomic particles. Now, if you take a quark, a subatomic particle from an electron, and then you took one atom and you made the atom, say, the size of the planet Earth, that one subatomic particle would be about the size of your fist compared to the planet Earth. That was considered undivisible. And now we're finding even smaller particles than ever before. So it's amazing what glass has enabled us to do.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and I'm kind of curious with the future and where it's going to take. Like Google has their Google Glass stuff and all the technology with that, and Corning and their stuff, and it's really neat to see like just where things could be merged together. These ideas and masterminds get together, and everybody kind of works together with their different areas of work, their expertise, and they come together with these amazing ideas. And then they make it come to fruition, and next thing you know, we have a cell phone in our pocket that we can't get rid of.
Yeah. But I think everything that we've done for the last century or so with the electron, create sound, telephone, and so many of our incredible electronic devices, we're going to be doing with light, and it'll be photonics. In fact, the early insertion of that is fiber optics.
Yeah,
Look
exactly.
what it's done for telecommunications. And we are going to probably use glass materials more so than ever. And what's ironic is glass is still a mystery to us. We don't know why glass forms as a glass, why it's a solid. It's just still remains one of the most fundamental mysteries of a material to science today. Does it flow over time? Well, it should, but it doesn't. And we're still trying to find out why.
Yeah, it is such a weird substance. Like I've always been fascinated by water, and then I got into glass, and glass acts very similar. Except, they'll go from a liquid to solid to a gas and back and forth. And with glass, it's neat because you can take a solid rod and heat the shit out of it and sculpt it and manipulate it, and then you have something else that you've created.
And look how lucky we are. It is the most abundant material on the planet. Silica is the basis for this. It's amazing, though, how overlooked it is. And I have people who teach at Princeton, and they'll come to me, as a proposal for a job, or something's broke and they want to know if I can fix it. And I'll ask them, what kind of glass is this? And they look at me cross-eyed like there's more than one kind of glass, and these are people at Princeton. And if you took 10 main ingredients and you were to shift them, a mole or so one way or the other, and change the property of that glass. You could actually make a new glass every second, and it would take you longer than the universe has existed to run out of different glasses.
Gosh.
Every second.
Wow. That's amazing.
And it's just, yeah. And when I work with, researchers, I really need to know what their major concern is. Is it going to be light? What spectrum of light? What wavelength of light they're going to be working with? What are their temperature problems? Glass will become more and more conductive as you heat it up. Will that be a factor? Its dielectric properties, thermal shock, chemical resistance. Glass does not stand up to alkali stuff like sodium and potassium and other materials. Well, I warn you, the only difference between me and a real expert is they would know when I was lying.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it makes total sense. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's part of the fun with being at Disney. I get asked all the damn time if my kiln's a fridge or if I'm using argon or some kind of other gas on my torch, and a lot of times I just say yes, or I'll just give some kind of silly answer, but then I'll give them the real answer, just kind of fuck with them. Because I play with the ignorance of people because people are ignorant. They don't know what's going on. It's part of my fun being there too is the educational side. So but like I know what you're saying. If they're not a glassblower, they don't have any idea.
Well, it's just amazing how blank their knowledge is. It's like everybody's whittled a piece of wood. They get the idea. You saw it. You nail it. Glass, with all its versatility, just seems to confound and be a foreign subject to so many people, and it's just strange in my view.
Yeah, I wonder if it's because of like its everyday use and just about everything that we have in our life. If people just gotten so desensitized to it and they just take it for granted, they don't,
Yeah, I mean, they're calling this the information age, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking over glass, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try to use like the whole everyday application. Like you drop a glass on the floor and it puts a shockwave through the glass, which causes all the molecules to go crazy. So next time you drop it, it'll probably break. I try to use that for like a generic description on why we have to anneal our glass and anneal it properly. And when I still explain it to them in the sense of, I know everybody has dropped a glass on the ground that didn't break. And they, so
I teach a fundamental course, and the way I explain it is, everything heats up, and when it heats up, it expands. When it cools, it contracts. And you can heat something up in one spot, it's always going to come against like a borderline where that glass did not experience the same thermal expansion. And the only way to relieve that is to get it all taken out. And if you have a polariscope and you show them what strain looks like,
it's neat.
that it's permanent, and then you take another unstrained rod and you flex it and you show them, what we call transient strain that's there from a mechanical force. You can literally show them what that force looks like,
Interesting. So like taking like a piece of 2 mil rod, for instance, or a stringer.
Yeah, a 6 millimeter rod, clear rod, and just flex it, and you will see it just, illuminate in all this color, right? And then what you do is you take your didymium glasses, your safety glasses, and put that on the polariscope, and you'll see that those, if they're safety glasses, they're strained like a motherfucker. And that's because you can only break glass in one direction under tension. So what they do is they heat it and they cool it so that outer surface now is under compression, like a Prince Rupert's drop. So when that ball bearing drops in their test, when it hits a normal piece of glass, what will happen is that impact actually makes it flex, kind of like a trampoline on the backside, right?
Okay, yep.
And it gets stiff. Now, if you bounce and that trampoline now is just tight, there's no spring to it, there's no flex then to that fabric. And that's why it can take the impact and not break. And it's always going to be the backside that will break, not the front side.
Huh. Is it just because of like the shock wave that goes through it and then just like blows out the back in a sense?
Well, you always need two things to break glass, and they always have to work in tandem. One is tension, that direction of force, and you need a defect. If you apply tension to a perfectly formed piece of glass with no defect, you cannot really break it. The amount of force it would take is astronomical. You're talking millions of pounds per square inch. But as soon as you put an imperfection in it, that just weakens the glass. And the biggest problem is, as soon as glass is made and it gets into room temperature, it starts to absorb water from the atmosphere. And as soon as that happens, you can't see it. But it's like watching this whole surface shatter. And it goes from 1 million pounds tensile pressure and higher to where glass generally fails at about 6,000 psi.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I always find like when I'm working, if I've cut myself the worst at times when a blowpipe or something had the tiniest little micro scratch in it and it just snapped at that point.
Yeah. When they make that Gorilla Glass, what they do is, and that's done through chemical tempering, it's a different process, but the most important part of that process is it gets tempered in this molten bath of potassium before it even has a chance to cool, so water can be absorbed by there. Silica and oxygen is the basic ingredient, right? And oxygen does not like to bond that well to silica. It would much rather bond with hydrogen. And what happens is, as soon as you get into room temperature, the air, which has an abundant amount of hydrogen, as well as all these other molecules, comes onto the surface, and it cleaves that SiO2 bond, and now you have SiOH. It's hydroxylated, and that's where it just weakens at the surface, not in the bulk, but always at the surface.
That's so neat. And it's, again, something that you would not be able to see. I mean, you could, I guess, so technically people say you can bench cool your glass. Even that's not even good for it, even if you've done a flame annealing.
Yeah, I mean, the bench cooling is just a way to get it into a furnace safely, right? And people also don't realize that when you anneal glass, it's not a case of if a little's good, a little bit more is better. Because glass can then go into phase separation. You know, glass is kind of like a cake ingredient, right? You got your bulk, which is the flour. That's silica. Then you've got your flux, the sugar that makes everything sweet and melts stuff. And then you've got your modifiers that make things form and gel together quickly, like an egg, and this otherwise boron. And what'll happen is, if you put this into the furnace at about 300 degrees C, your flux starts to become active, and it wants to break away from the material, and that can actually start to leave the material at the surface. So if you start to anneal glass too long, you can actually change the property of that glass.
Yeah, I've learned that firsthand experience with, especially with now with certain colors that are being introduced that I'm not used to using and letting them go through too many cycles.
Yeah,
or sitting,
yeah, because for color, you're using phase separation to allow that network to form so it can block light or block a spectrum of light and reflect back red, for instance, on a striking color.
Okay. Yeah, that's so neat. So,
yeah, you really get into the material when you're doing the scientific glass because you have to, there are so many factors when it comes into application for that. Just whether it'll hold in helium, helium is a small molecule and will work its way through most glasses fairly quickly.
That's again, I love that part of the glass is there's so many different things you can do with it application wise, but having to know the certain glass to use for those certain applications.
Yeah, and if not, they know that if they add in a little bit of this, a little bit of that, they can actually tailor make a glass for a application and do all the designing now on software and just say, okay, it's going to have this thermal expansion and it'll have this dielectric property. The Young's modulus will be such and such. And so it's really become far more advanced.
Yeah, it's neat. I never thought about that before. It makes total sense, though.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
sense.
it's just, it's like anything else in great cooking, right?
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Yeah.
So, and I guess to kind of go through the process of learning the scientific application on a lathe, for instance, which is probably, I guess, all you guys do is it's all lathe work. But the beginning of it, when you're learning the joints and the different welds and the T joints and everything else, how does that process begin? The teaching process, is it like learning just one specific tedious bullshit detail at a time, or do they take you through the whole process and then break it down?
Yeah. You want to do it now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, when I started out, it would be a long time before you got onto a lathe.
Okay.
You pulled points, and you pulled points, and it was almost like boot camp because they would just say, this is, you'd have a table full of points, and then they'd say, okay, throw these out and I'll pull some real points.
Yep. That's how I teach it.
Yeah. And it's mostly, just like, any kind of hazing. They want to see if you can stick through it, whether you're going to quit now now's as good a time to find out as later.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a hazing period you went through. But then once you have your table full of points, they would tell you to, okay, now make a bunch of bulbs. Now you found out, oh boy, this one's crooked, this one is off weight, this one is, and you really started to learn to select your good points.
Yeah.
After a while. And even today, I try to do as much work on the bench as I can. Mostly because you can get stupid on a lathe. By stupid, I mean in regards to your fire. You can all of a sudden forget all these real nuances that are extremely important when you're working on the bench,
Mm-hmm.
And you develop these tailor-made fires that only you can work with best. If you you can take somebody else's sort of flame, right? But it's almost like your own autograph, that flame that you work with. And one of the things I think people run into when they take a class somewhere or they see something on YouTube is they try to tune that fire just like, Micah Evans had, or Kiva Ford, or myself, and they just cannot get anywhere. And it's basically because the more advanced you are, the hotter you're working.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And when you're working and you're not advanced enough, things go into chaos far too quickly. You always see that guy starting out, the apprentice or whatever, and they are just in the fire and disaster is happening and they're still in the fire, trying to figure it out. And it takes them a while, but eventually you'll see you're always trying to get on that verge of chaos, but also know how to draw it back.
Yep.
Okay. And you can only learn that technique, I think, on a bench. You can't really learn it on the lathe because it just, you just get into a habit of working hard, fast, and hot all the time.
Yeah, and having that kind of perpendicular and vertical presence, going on with the flame and the, according to the glass and the, locked into a machine, the difference where you can move your arms around and get different angles and get glass flow, to actually learn the material.
Yeah.
Because like you're saying, like I know, like when I teach it, I love the new student to come in and then they're intimidated as hell just by the idea of what they're going to do. And then they actually melt the glass and it's even more intimidating. But I'm just like, make a blob of glass. I don't care what it looks like. Just get used to your flame, your glass. And if you start losing control, take it out of the flame, but keep the glass moving type thing. And but they don't grasp that at first until they start to realize when they have this pile of shit they've made, they don't realize what they've done. But then they do it again, they've realized everything that they've done. It all kind of makes more sense, And it's,
nothing teaches you like failure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's why a lot of times, like I don't mind holding a student's hand, but I prefer to like show them a demo, get them on there, and then walk away, and then come back and be like, hey, how's it going? And then maybe grab an arm angle, whatever. But again, like
absolutely.
you're saying, but it's all about like the trial by fire. I mean, literally for us, the sense it is trial by fire because you're saying, the idea of the flame is that the glass it's used to manipulate the glass to get it hot enough to then manipulate the glass. And that's all you need the flame for. If you want to melt the shit out of it and make soup, fine, go for it. But I want to get it just soft enough to make a wine glass, or something of that nature. Where on a lathe, like you're saying, it's full bore. Your chucks are spinning, your flame's blowing, your blow hose is on, you're ready to go.
Yeah, you're just thinking about the product, not the process, because so much of that process is taken out of your hands.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're detached from it. One of the things that always drove me mad when I was an apprentice was, you're doing a job and you're learning it for the first time. You're shown a procedure. You do something, and it just gets screwed up, right? So you call the boss over and you say, "Look, this happened. I'm not sure what happened." Well, the first thing they do is try to salvage the piece, and then they walk away and say, "Try it again." Well, all you've been instructed on is how to deal with an imperfect procedure that you've perfected. And you're like scratching your head. So that was always driving me nuts because so many of my teachers back then were so advanced that they could... It would be like them talking trigonometry to me, I would think.
Right.
Or it was so ingrained that they could no longer interpret how I could possibly screw up.
Right. Or why you screwed up.
Yeah.
Trying to regress.
Yeah.
And that's a good point because I know myself, I always learn more when I teach, no matter what I'm doing. So that's one of the reasons I enjoy teaching as well, because it always brings me back to the beginning. And recently I've had a new student, and I've had to like relearn how to reteach again. That what did I do through the process? So I've been writing a lot of things down and keeping more of a journal of it. But
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
important.
You have to deconstruct.
Yeah, it's important.
And get under the hood and really get introspective about what you're doing so you can interpret that. And
Yeah.
one of the great things, I learned too when I got involved in the ASGS was writing things and to present workshops and demos in a lucid or at least translatable fashion for other people. You actually have to do an analysis of yourself. And through that process, you learn quite a bit what you've been doing intuitively for too long.
Yeah, absolutely. And the intuitively part, I agree. I find that being said, when I teach women how to do glass, it always seems like they pick it up a little bit quicker because they have this natural intuition, where like a man doesn't want to even read instructions, but a female will sit there and like intuitively understand the material almost right away.
Yeah, and there's I mean, we get in a car, we don't even want to know how to read a map.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We just keep driving.
Yeah.
And we're gonna try and find that solution for ourselves. Some of the best glass blowers I've seen are women. Sally Prosh is an incredible glass blower. Karen Lamont, an incredible artist. Downey Hatz does great work. I mean, I go down the line.
Yeah.
And they're underappreciated sometimes too,
Yeah, it's amazing. I know what you mean. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of neat with the glass and the pipe industry too. Like the up and coming female presence is getting more and more and more. Like where it went from them having like female competitions to where like they're all just everybody's competing against each other because their level is that good and it's respected now as that being a level of that that type of technique.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
There's pretty nice shit. So man. So what kind of current projects are you working on? If you're able to talk about it.
Well, right now, doing a lot of work with dark matter, dark energy experiments with the supercell, diffuse silica, and we're doing some work in the atomic group on these ultra sensitive like magnetometers and atomic clocks, and it's challenging. The stuff I'm working on is so thin in this in the atomic area, trying to create very miniaturized prototypes for this new kind of magnetometry called surf magnetometers. And what it could enable us to do, for instance, is to have handheld MRIs.
Oh, wow.
Instead of going into a tunnel, you could just have something as small as a pointer in the hands of the physician, pinpointing different areas of the bodies and scoping to get imaging that way. And you wouldn't need superconducting magnets. You wouldn't need liquid helium to keep those superconducting magnets functional. You wouldn't need all of that shielding as well. And in fact, if you took that kind of technology, there's a level of sensitivity called a Tesla, and that can get down to about 10 to the minus 15 Tesla. It's called SQUID as to how they measure using liquid helium and superconducting materials. After that, you get all this noise because it starts reading all the surrounding materials around it. With this new technology, what you do is you create atoms to act like little gyroscopes, okay? with a laser. And these atoms are spinning like gyroscopes. If you introduce any kind of field with an electromagnetic background at all, no matter how discrete, these gyroscopes will start to wobble. And from another laser, they can see that wobble because it will shift the wavelength of the light. And so at 10 to the minus 15, that's the present technology using enormous amounts of energy and enormous amounts of resources that are finite. With this new technology, using nothing more than glass cubes and something very small, this can get down to 10 to the minus 22 sensitivity on the Tesla. So that's well over 1 million times more sensitive than present technology.
Wow. Damn.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing. And with this other stuff that we're doing, we're trying to create single crystals. We're growing these crystals in very, very pure ampules made out of synthetically fused silica. And it's very challenging because we want parts per trillion pure. And you have to get down to about 800 to 1,000 degrees to get this crystal to form. And it's basically sodium and iodine, which, by the way, is a controlled substance. You have to buy it from the FDA.
Interesting.
Yeah, in fact, I guess it's used to make speed.
Huh.
We're growing it so we can detect radiation through a process called scintillation.
Huh.
And it's really challenging because the ampules have to be extremely pure. They have to be out of something that wants to react with sodium in a bad way. All glasses do. And so we got a process going where we coat that inside with ultra pure graphite. And it manages not to affect the material of the property of the crystal that we're trying to grow, and can be removed from the ampule. And we're getting help on that from this company up in Canada called Sandfire. They've been a great help on that.
Fascinating. Is it like a powdered graphite, or is it liquid?
It's what they do, and it's no big secret. You put in any kind of polar solvent or even propane.
Okay.
But ultra pure sources like that. And if you can get that into a controlled atmosphere and heat that carbon atom up to about 1,000 degrees centigrade, you crack open that carbon molecule, and it just sticks onto the glass surface and bonds to it permanently.
Oh, interesting.
Although you can easily remove it by just heating it with a torch, but having it in an open atmosphere. But if there's nowhere for that carbon molecule to escape, it will bond to that surface and stick on.
Huh, that's interesting because I know there's been times where I've used cork as like a stopper, and the cork's like caught on fire, and like left this smoke in the glass, which then became part of the glass. Like I couldn't get it out of the glass.
Right, and then
like
you try heating it, and
it makes it worse.
It makes it worse.
Yeah.
You've actually cracked the carbon.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. That makes total sense. Because it's.
And I'm sure somebody screwed up and came up with that.
Yeah, and found out a good
Said,
application
we can
for
use
it.
This,
yeah, hell yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. Huh, interesting. Yeah, it makes total sense though. Now that I see that, because it's cool, because like I see like graphite tape and things that are used on lathe work, or between joints, or what have you, to make sure things don't stick. And having that graphite layer in there, it makes total sense that it won't bond, allow any kind of bonding to the surface of the glass.
Well, and graphite is extremely inert, so it won't affect the properties of other materials too.
That makes sense. So it's kind of a neutral kind of thing.
Yeah, and because we can control the purity of the starting material, get it ultra, ultra pure, we can control any kind of contamination that it may impart as we grow the crystal. And how a crystal grows now is just something I'm learning about, and it's just a fascinating process. I mean, it's diametrically different than a glass property, because you actually start to cook this in stages. You're moving the furnace up slowly in what we call a zone furnace, so we can grow the crystal down at one area and start to nucleate this growth of crystals that are in perfect structure of order as it grows, so it can direct light or energy in very specific directions. Glass is random, so it has the wonderful ability of light to just kind of disperse it in a very good pattern, where crystals also have the ability to be birefringent, so they can direct light in a very specific pattern.
Interesting. So instead of using a mirror, you can use a crystal to kind of redirect a motion of light.
Yeah, or to just pick up the specific footprint of how these photons are traveling.
Okay.
And use it as a scintillator that way.
Huh. So neat. It's almost creating like something almost perfect and pure.
Yeah, way. And we have to measure its purity down to parts per trillion, which is another part of the experiment that we have to do. So now we want to be able to accurately measure any kind of radiation when we're dealing with trying to probe all this stuff that's out there in the universe. If we took every element, every planet, everything that we've ever been able to measure up to date, it still only comes to about 4% of the universe. Yeah. There's all this other stuff out there that we cannot directly measure. And we have to come up with elaborate ways of finding out. We know it's out there because of its effect on gravity.
Yeah, and like the whole gravity wave, idea now that they've able to actually prove was real. So it's so fascinating.
Every day I post on Facebook some new discovery being made in glass or with glass, and I never run out of new stuff. Sometimes it's multiple stuff, and it's just fascinating for me to go through it.
Yeah, you wonder if like the Teslas and Edisons and Einstein even himself, if they were around nowadays with our technology and the glass, like you're saying, the way that you can change chemistry of the glass to go to whatever you needed to be, catered to your needs. Like what the hell these guys would be coming up with nowadays,
Oh,
They'd probably blow the earth up or some shit.
How did Einstein figure out quantum waves?
I know, that's what I was thinking the other day. We were watching it on the news and they were talking about it. It's like, I can understand like throwing a rock in the water and it creates ripples. I can understand the theory and thinking that, but to come up with even a mathematical equation to prove it, or in theory prove it, it's
well, and to get into any concept of time as a fabric. Mm-hmm. And he totally gave a new way of looking at gravity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just it's amazing. Of course, we wouldn't be where we are today without Einstein or Tesla. So,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, it's all if, ands, and buts when you come to that. But, we always say in, research, all the easy stuff's been done before. That's the problem.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Now it's reinventing the wheel over and over and over
Yeah.
again.
Damn. I wish I could have done that. I had that figured out.
Yeah. No shit. Oh, that's so fucking cool. I just be like, I could talk to you all night on this stuff, man. It's so killer. You know, and we had talked last week. I definitely want to bring you back and do like a MythBuster show, and really kind of get some of these concepts and ideas that are just thrown around randomly to one of our kind of a side thing here. One of our terms that have been thrown around and used forever by the customer in the smoke shops is the whole double blown concept. Based on how thick a pipe is, like, oh, this thing's been double blown. Does people ever use that terminology or is that word in your landscape of scientific glass?
I hear so much terminology that just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I only recently found out a gong was a standard tapered joint.
Yeah.
I still not sure totally what encalment, encasement, all of these other sources of terms, and I'm sure I've done these, but I'm just calling it lamination or something else,
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of our terminology that's thrown around and used comes from like the Venice days and the more of the art side, where you guys, because of scientific application, you're using more scientific terms, which in all reality have a better definition of what the actual technique is compared to
Yeah, or I don't know. I mean, why is a Maria called a Maria?
I've asked that same fucking thing, dude, for 15 years. Yeah. Exactly. I've been making these flower vases at Disney the past week, and I'm like, I put a Maria in the piece just for something different. And I was explaining that to a girl the other day. I was like, this is called a Maria. And she's like, why is that? I was like, I have no idea. I've been trying to find this out.
And I know, sometimes you got to change things around. I mean, if you Google glory hole now, you're just going to get a nightmare.
Exactly. We can't use that word at Disney because of that shit. We got a single guy, in the back in the furnace, and he has to call it the reheat.
Yeah, when I'd go to Corning, and there was a great little bar pub called the Glory Hole.
Oh shit!
And I'd noticed all of a sudden it started to disappear, and it was called the Gaffer. Now, I guess people wanting to know where the glory hole were going to be disappointed one way or the other.
Yeah, the bathrooms are all closed now.
Yeah, no holes in the wall.
Oh, that is so funny. I know there's so much fallacy involved in glass blowing in general. I mean, just every time I make Olaf, the little snowman.
You had to say fallacy.
Yeah, but it's true, man. Like it's like everybody. I've been asked by a girl while I'm on stage at Disney making Olaf if I was making a penis. She's like, "You making a penis?" And I was like, "Yeah, actually, I am." And I said, and then there's like nobody in the store, so I was able to say this to her, and that response. Normally, I would get probably fired. But but it's so it's so funny just the perverted, according to modern society, whatever terminology that we use, the looks, it's just I love it. That just makes me laugh.
I have a funny story. There was this breakthrough we made, and we're trying to make something for the cover of Nature. Now, Nature is the most prestigious journal there is in science. It's like the Academy Award. You get published in Nature, you're going back almost to the time of Newton.
Oh, wow.
So we had found a way to do imaging with MRI using noble gases. So I won't go into it too much, but the key gas was xenon. So we did this experiment, and we had this tiny little cell. Now they wanted to have me make something that would fit inside nothing bigger than, say, the size of a quarter in a sphere. And it had to be something about the technology. And they said, anything you can think of. So I proposed that I would do XE in like a three-dimensional figure as a model. You know, the element for xenon is XE.
Okay, yeah.
And I'd make a xenon model. So I go back, and they say, yeah, okay, but try something that everybody would recognize as well, too. So I go back and I put this XE together. I take very small, slides, and I cut them and make this, font of X, capital X and E, and I mount it inside this spherical cell. And then I take a penis model, and it's, got foreskin and the jewels at the bottom, and even a little pubic hair, and I put that inside this little sphere, and I call it the hard-on cell. So I go back to the professor, and I go, here's the hard-on cell. And, I don't think he heard it. I kind of mumbled it, and I gave it to him. And he looks at this raging penis inside the cell. And I quickly gave him the real copy. So about 2 years later, I'm actually at Los Alamos and meeting with some people. And I'm talking to this one professor, and they're talking about some coatings and stuff. And she's introduced to me, and you're the glassblower at Princeton, aren't you? And I said, yeah, you're the one who made that hard-on cell. And I guess it made the whole round secretly.
Oh, man. And that must have been pretty damn small, though, too, huh?
Well, yeah, I've heard that before.
Oh, shit. That's too funny, though. I mean, yeah, it's just thinking that just the application to actually create that. It's kind of pretty funny stuff. But just in general, man, that is too funny. It's amazing how fast things
you
get
would
around.
think there would be much wooden sticks that you're working with. Man, there are some hilarious people that I work with that are just a joy to be around.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
They're just brilliant too.
Hell yeah. I guess the wife has officially gotten home. All right, let's get done barking here in a sec. Hey, baby.
That sounds like a big hound.
Yeah, he's a husky Aussie mix.
Okay.
So yeah, he's a cool dog. He's got the bright blue eyes and a great temperament.
Yeah.
I think he has a little bit of lab in him too. But yeah, he's a killer dog. They're really, really like super awesome. Probably the best dog I've ever had.
Oh, yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll kind of move forward here. How are you holding up physically from the 40 years of the glass?
Oh, my eyes are what I miss the most.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting to either tighter and tighter detail. Some of the tolerances I have are plus or minus 20 micron. Now, if you take the average thickness of a human hair, it's 100 micron.
Jeez, yeah.
And I have to blow these spheres with a wall thickness of exactly 120 micron plus or minus 20 micron.
Wow.
And it's out of this aluminum silicate.
So how do you gauge something like that? Like when you're actually blowing it out?
It's mostly farming, or kind of like playing landmine, where you blow it a little thick. You try to blow them all consistently, right?
Right.
And then you measure them, and you have to measure them It's very difficult because any temperature fluctuation will throw off your measurements. So you measure them, and then if it's a little thick, you can kind of reblow it thinner, a little bit bigger, pull off some material, try again. But you only have two chances at this, because what makes this torturous is they want the thinnest material possible to hold in the most amount of gas as possible. So it's like trying to get into heaven without dying, right? And glass is not like paper with an ignition point or any kind of point. They're all ranges. So once I make a bunch of these, then they're all pressure tested to almost 300 psi. And bear in mind, it's only a little bit thicker than a hair, 120 micron thick, about 1 inch in diameter. And it has to take 300 psi for a period of a half hour.
Wow.
And about 50% of the ones that I get in range explode. And you'd say, well, why is that? Well, because we're way over the borderline on what it would be. And trust me, if 100% of them, pass the test, the pressure test, they would go thinner until 50% of them would fail.
Yeah, totally. I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just some days you have a good day, some days you don't. But we found that if we measured something that had been blown more than twice, it had no chance of surviving any pressure test. If you blow it once, you'll get about 60% yield. If you blow it the second time, about 20% will be in there. Anytime after that, 0.
Interesting. Is that because the act of moving the glass twice, like, does something to the molecular structure of it?
Yeah, every time you put, glass in a fire and you get it into its melting point, it can start to lose some of its materials just as they boil away. You see it when you work Pyrex. You'll see, that gray ghost in cooler areas. That's the sodium starting to boil out and recondense in cooler spots. You see it in the flame, right? When it's yellow.
Yeah.
That sodium is not on the glass anymore. It's in the flame.
It makes sense. Huh?
You can start to break away that glass. Anytime you do a fire cut, and you put two pieces of glass that have been fire cut and you put them together, if you look at it in the periscope, you'll see a fine line, because that edge that you did the fire cut is going to be slightly different material.
Fascinating. But again, makes total sense to me, at least.
I mean,
so
glass is strange.
Yeah, it is.
It's a perfect insulator against electrical properties, right? But as you start to raise its temperature, it becomes more and more conductive. Till one of the neat experiments you'll see is you take a glass bottle, right, and you warm it up a little bit in a torch, and then you put it in the microwave, and you set that microwave for 5-10 minutes. That microwave will melt the glass because you've gotten that temperature up. So now when those atoms vibrate, they're going to collide against each other more often and cause the heat to pass. When they do a furnace melt, It goes from, a fired charge to where, as it becomes liquid in a float process, there's these big electrodes that go right into the molten glass, and it's an electrical charge, and the glass is part of the element that's heating it up to melt itself.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
It's just an amazing material.
I know it is. I love it.
I mean, you can inflate it, stretch it. I work a lot with this guy in the optics department. We're doing a lot of anionic bonding Pyrex to silicon chips, and he has to put on these lenses and stuff on the work, and he has to grind and polish, and he only has one direction. It's subtractive. If he goes a little bit too far, if he gets a scratch, he's screwed. And me, I can add to it, shrink it, expand it. And this poor son of a bitch,
Yeah, Jesus.
It's like working with the toughest wife in the world,
Yeah. Oh man, that's crazy. So your eyes are getting. Are you finding cataract stuff issues or just
No, I'm getting more and more farsighted.
Okay.
So I have to work, really close. I just recently did a job where they gave me a rectangular tube that was a 0.5 millimeter ID by 1 millimeter OD.
Jeez.
And it was 5 millimeters wide. So it was like, heating up paper.
Yeah, crazy.
And I have to tubulate it to 3 millimeter heavy wall tube.
So you have to actually condense it down?
Yeah, what I came up with, I tried all kinds of things. It's got this silicon chip welded to it, and that silicon chip is actually kind of a cell. It's like a cup, a little miniature cup that sits over a little hole that we've drilled on this strip of rectangular thin wall tubing. Okay, and now we need to get gases in there and then seal it off, and we want it as short as possible. But to get that on there, we got to get onto a vacuum system, put a stem on it, just like you would see on any kind of vacuum tube, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your bulbs, for instance. So I took a graphite, or I took tungsten, and I shaped it into kind of a thin point with a slight arrow, slight hex to it, right? And I can just barely get the tip of that into that little 0.5 millimeter slot on this thin wall stuff. So if I put the fire onto the tungsten, that tungsten then transfers the heat onto the glass. I don't even have to put it in the fire, and it just slumps and forms around the tungsten.
Wow.
If I keep twirling it. If I get it too hot, it'll stick and it's a mess, but otherwise there's just no way you can blow through it until you get a blow tube on it.
Huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And then once you get that on, but figuring that out just took some time.
Yeah, not having losing your far side of this thing,
yes.
Not be able to see it.
And you gotta be up so close to see anything, and you got your didymium to work with, and it was just
yeah, time for some prescriptions.
Yeah.
How's your wrist and your arms and stuff, and any carpal tunnel issues or tendonitis or any of that stuff, arthritis?
No, I mean, really, I worked a heck of a lot harder when I was in the industry.
Yeah.
Younger. I mean, uh, we used to work really, really, really big stuff, 24-inch diameter stuff, and that's a whole different technique in itself,
Mm-hmm.
and had to work a lot of quartz as well. Here, it's more one at a time and trying to problem solve some issues. So it satisfies my intellectual curiosity and goes well with my lack of any kind of work ethic so far as working hard goes anymore. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
I mean, the old joke is you're going to work at a university to get away from glass blowing.
Funny.
But no, it's a lot of fun, and it's just you're always learning something new there, and I'm just blessed to be working where I am.
Yeah, man, it's awesome opportunity for sure.
Yeah,
it's
it's
cool.
just, and it just seems improbable because I mean, I don't have an advanced degree. I started working when I was 17 as an apprentice, and now I'm at Princeton University. It wasn't by design; it was just by being in the right place at the right time, and when it falls in, you just do the best you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's taking those doors that open up and opportunities, but also having some drive just to walk through the doors.
Yeah, it's like Yogi Berra said, the harder I try, the luckier I get.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just to anybody out there, I would just say, just keep plugging away. You never know how something adverse can actually, when you look back in your life, could have been the best thing that ever happened to you.
Yeah.
Yep,
absolutely.
It's funny that way.
Yeah.
And how sometimes you can get trapped into this honeypot where you get too comfortable and life can just pass you by. And boom, you're stuck, and now you're 40, 50 years old saying, how did I get here?
Yeah, man, it goes by fast. I'll be 40 this year myself, and it's like 17 years on the torch even sounds like, holy shit, 17 years. I got people talking to me about this stuff or just getting started that are 17, nowadays.
Well, as you get older, you always think you're the same age, right?
Yeah, totally.
And then you start seeing, holy Christ, Jack Nicholson looks like, a corpse.
Yeah, right. And then I realized I'm the same way or getting there.
Yeah. All your heroes are just suddenly, limping and very fragile. And you start spouting all the shit your dad said. I don't pay the electric company. Can't you turn off a frickin' light?
Yep.
All this stuff at your kids, and you just.
Yeah, that's funny shit, man. Well, hey, brother, I gotta kind of wrap this up here for all of us.
Yeah.
Only because my computer's about to die, and it's yeah. Well, so like I said, man, I could talk to you for hours and days. But what I want to do is bring you back on closer to May when we kind of get more into the symposium and then do a little kind of a Q&A Mythbuster show. I think it'd be a lot of fun to kind of lead us all into, to me, why this is so important that the symposium's happening and also that this foundation exists.
Yeah.
So I think it would be a lot of fun to share this.
If you get into that YouTube and to videotape some of the things, you'll see some amazing work there.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, we'll be doing some video recording. At least I'll be doing some video recording, I should say. And I'm also going to take advantage of do some interviews while I'm there too. I'm going to try and contact some other folks that are going to be there. And
you got to talk to Kiva Ford and Tim Dreyer's great guy. I've just been blessed because I really was very orthodox so far as art glass went for most of my career, but for the influences of people like Sally Prash, Paul Stankard, Dennis Brining, and so many others, I just got such a deep appreciation for all the artistic glass out there.
Heck yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Hell yeah, man. Well, before we let you go, if you want to give us any kind of parting piece of advice to anybody getting started that's even just been in the industry forever, and then also how we can go about finding you out there in cyberspace.
I would just say, if you're doing flame work, know the flame. It's like Fight Club. The first rule about flame working is know the flame. The second rule is know the flame. And if you really start thinking about it as being three-dimensional, there's a top, bottom, center to it. There's a heat zone, and even things such as nuance as the velocity, how much pressure and flow you're getting can affect it. And just always experiment, change sizes and stuff. Don't get casual about the flame. Be very exquisite about it, and I think you'll be a much better glass blower.
Yeah, that's well said. Absolutely. And what's your Facebook page?
Oh, I've got a little personal Facebook, but most of my time is spent running the American Scientific Glass Blowers Facebook page. And if you look for them, we've got hundreds of short little videos showing stuff like the famous Jesus seal and other techniques, and a lot of information. We just spend most of that just exposing people about glass as a material, whether it's art, science, or whatever. It has to do with glass.
Awesome. Hell yeah. Well, we love it, man, and love having you on. And again, I'm going to get you back on here probably about, I guess this is almost March now, so probably next month we'll get you back on and talk about the symposium, what's going on there, and then get into some myth busting and get us all on the right path to being experts in our field.
Yeah, and if anybody has a question or had a problem, toss them in. Maybe we can try and problem solve some of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll be putting that out there for sure. Heck yeah, man. Well, again, I appreciate you taking some time off on your Sunday, man. It's been a pleasure having you on, and we look forward to having you on next month.
Hey, it's been a joy, and I had a chance to listen to some of your other podcasts, and boy, it's just been fun.
Awesome, man.
I'm looking forward to going through some of the library.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I would love some feedback from you too. Anything I say wrong that's not right, not true, let me know because I will correct it.
We'll just start rumors.
Hey, perfect. Awesome, brother. Well, have a beautiful night, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, Jason. Take care.
Yeah, man. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show. If you have any questions, comments, or remarks, please leave them in the show notes page area where it says comments. We'll see you soon. Have a wise night.